Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that many of you are probably working on trying to get into the meeting room. We're checking things out. And probably many of you got the notice too late to even attend. But instead of putting it off and holding the meeting in a few days, I thought we'd just go ahead and get started. Being live and in person or real time wasn't as important as just getting a chance to talk to you. If after all this tonight I didn't answer your questions, or you're just still feeling confused, we can set up a time that works in your schedule to talk and go over material. But I'm going to cover the frequently asked questions. One, I should have on your screen Moodle. You'll be able to look along with me as I go through some of the different things of the class. Trying to think where this falls in your curriculum and whether this is your first online class. For some of you, it may be. So I'm going to kind of pretend it is. And if you're an old hand taking classes on Moodle, I'll probably bore you for a couple minutes. But in our class, there, of course, are little blocks for each week. Unit 1, Unit 2, and so on. We scroll back up here to the top. Before any of the unit blocks begin, there's this big block for overall for the whole class. You're going to see a few things that you don't see as students. Faculty guide, and it's turned red because it's hidden from you. And the syllabus, they give me a copy in Word. So if I need to edit it or to make any changes, I can do that and then upload it. So you will only see one syllabus. Click it, download it, print it out if you need to, and really look at it. It's important. It has lots of good information in it. The course calendar, that's something I created to just keep you on track with which weeks are what weeks. The dates for these classes always seem confusing. The online classes, Tuesday is a key date in the class. It's the beginning date, but when you look at a lot of your materials, it lists the Monday. It lists day 7 or the end date of each week because we need to turn in attendance at the end of each week. So you might have gotten something that said the class goes from, would Monday be, Monday the 25th of May would be the first attendance date because that's the first end of a week. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, today's our first day, day 1 of week 1, and next Monday is our last day of week 1. That's when most things are due. So to keep all that straight, I have a calendar. Again, click it, download it, print it, and you can stare at it and go, oh, okay, I know what week we're in. I know what we're doing. The news forum, that's for you to ask me any question you like or just make other way around, for me to let you know things. You should have gotten an email from me today talking about this meeting. I sometimes send out attachments. When I have these meetings, sometimes I'm going over homework. So I might have Excel here on the screen and I'll work out homework problems. Well, I want to send you that Excel file so you can follow along with what I did. As you watch the video, you can look at the Excel file and go, oh, okay, I'm following along. All the announcements, I'm clicking that news form, will be here. So you can go in and look at any prior announcement. Anything that I emailed out to you came through this news forum. I make it like an announcement. It'll always sit here, but a copy of it goes to your inbox. And if you're like me, sometimes the inbox gets overcluttered and you lose something, you can't find it. There's always the original here. So this will become a longer and longer list as the class goes on. Then, prayer and praise requests. Those are always important. Please feel free to share things. As a group, we can raise your prayer requests. We can celebrate with you in the praises. The facilitators forum, that's for you to ask me anything you want to ask me about the class. You're confused on something, more than likely if you are, other people are too. But there's times when you don't want to ask the question publicly, like raising your hand in a class. You want to just ask me a question. Email's fine. You also, on the emails I send out to you, you have my cell phone number and of course my email. So email me, text me, call me on my cell phone, and we can talk over whatever you don't really want to ask for the rest of the class. Okay, finally, the last thing in this overall is something called resources. There's a whole bunch of forms in here, more than you're going to need. So let me click it and show you what I mean. The publisher makes a lot of worksheets that are supposed to help you do things. Like if you're trying to decide, should I rent a house or should I buy a house? There's a worksheet to do that. Will you need it? Maybe. One, you could do it for yourself as you're writing your final paper, and whether rent and buy is a decision you're making and that fits with your finances, then use it. If a homework problem that you're doing, and a lot of your homework problems involve a little story about this person or this family, and they've come to you for advice because you're going to take the role in this class of the advisor of all things financial. So you're going to be saying things like, well, I've read your situation and this is what I think you should do. So you might need to do a worksheet like this to help answer the story problem where you're trying to tell somebody should they rent or buy. So when you need them, come here and grab them. Don't feel like every one of these has to be used or that they fit with a certain homework problem. You can use some of these 2 and 3 times for different situations, and other ones you'll never look at. Just know that it's here and don't feel bad if you're finding yourself not needing a lot of these. Okay, so that takes us through the main section. Let's come into what am I supposed to be doing this week? One, there's always a devotion. The devotion is for you to read, and a lot of times there isn't anything else to do. Occasionally, there's a discussion forum where you jump in and talk about the devotion. The introductions, which most of you have been doing, when you click these discussion forums, you can add a new discussion, which means start talking about yourself or whatever the topic is. That's where you post your first thing. Click it, type it, submit it, and it shows up here. And as you can see, people have posted their introductions, and it's telling you that other people have replied. So when I click on the subject matter here, I can see not only the post, let's say like mine. I can click on mine, can look at mine. If I was you, you could click and see what I posted. Again, my cell phone and email are in there too, and then replies that people have posted. The new ones will have a new symbol by them, letting you know that you hadn't read it already. And then you just go back with the course introduction tab, and it takes you back to all the conversations that are happening. And you can see that this one was posted 8 minutes ago, probably while we were talking. So I haven't read that, and it will scream at me new until I look at it. If I go back into Unit 1, it also tells me I have one unread post. So it's also reminding me, hey, click in here, there's something you haven't read. Something's changed since the last time you were here. Unit 1's lecture, again, like the devotion, is something for you to read. It looks like a sheet of paper. Click on it, read through it. It will help you with the material. And then here, this is the spot I wanted to take you to. Challenges of financial planning. This is going to look a little weird, and I know mine looks slightly different than yours. So if there's something you're not seeing, let me know. Add a new discussion. We click that. That is how I'm going to set up a question. So let's see. Answer the following question. Let's just take this because I think this might be set for you not to be able to answer until I submit it. So I'm going to ask. You'll love the clicking sounds of somebody typing in your ear. There, all done. Now it's there. So now when you go in, you should, just like with the introductions, see mine. But to answer it, you're going to need to click on mine. So you'll click there. You'll read mine, and then you'll be able to reply. That's where you'll answer the question that was posted. It will not let you answer anybody else's or see anybody else's answer until you answer this. Some discussion forums are set up differently, so if you're able to see everybody's, don't feel like that's a problem. I just think this one is set up so that it is what's called question and answer. The question's posed, you answer it, and Moodle, in its little quirks, won't let you see anybody's answers until about an hour from the time you submit. If you come back after an hour, you should be able to see your reply to the question and everybody else's. And then you need to jump in the conversation. Each week, you need to answer the question that's posed and reply to 2 more people. So I want to see at least 3 posts from you each week. Please take the time to make them look professional. I'm not talking about APA style and 3 sources and all that stuff. All I want is full sentences, capital letters at the beginning of the sentence, spell and grammar check it. Some of these don't have any right answer. They are more about, what do you think about this? Or what's the hardest thing for you when it comes to financial planning? Or why do you think people have trouble with financial planning? Well, your answer could be totally different than somebody else's. There's no right answer. So jumping into the conversation, you can say, hey, that's a really good point. Here's what I was thinking. Or, now that you say that, that reminds me of my Aunt Susie, and here's the story. You can have a great discussion. I am not looking for a huge academic, scholarly discussion. This is a class that gets down to the nitty-gritty of life. And we just need to be honest and talk about things and say, yeah, I struggle with that. Or here's a tip I learned on how to deal with that financial issue. We're all going to bless each other with the knowledge and the been there, done that stories. Okay, income and expense tracking. If we click on this, you find a description of what you've got to do, some recommendations of places to go. You, as I told you when I sent you that initial email before the class began, track what you bring in, which isn't usually as hard. It's your paychecks, but track what you spend. And most of us don't jot down every time we spend money. If we did, we'd probably freak out at how much we spend in certain categories. But for the length of the class, I'd really like you to try to track it. That will help you in preparing a budget. And you'll either prepare the budget based on what you saw, or you'll say, I don't like what I saw, and I'm going to change those habits, and I'm going to make it into a different budget. Then, group assignments. And since I haven't taught this group of people before, a few of you have had me in other classes, I need to know if you already have established groups. So if I'm going to give it 24 hours, can you email me and let me know name 3 names or something and say, hey, the 4 of us have always been a group and we work really good together and we'd like to stay together. And I'll take those recommendations and I'll put you in those groups. And then I'll look at anybody else who hasn't been in a group, and I might add a person to your group, or I may just take those people that haven't responded and throw them together in a group. So please go ahead and look at what's assigned here, but it really is supposed to be get together with your group and talk about these things. So watch for an announcement. Cornerstone's trying to do some different things with groups. One, it's always been annoying to try to figure out how to get the group together, and then who's going to post for the group, and what if somebody doesn't do her part, and then she's going to get a score for it, and she doesn't really deserve the score because we all did the work and she didn't participate. Here's the nice thing. You're going to turn in your own stuff. All you're doing in this group is getting together, talking about it, maybe helping each other a little with, I'm struggling with this. Can somebody explain to me? You see, I've got to do a couple things here, like a savings ratio. I don't get how to do that. So your group member says, let me show you. Okay? I'm not talking about somebody does all the work for the whole group. That's not at all. But then you individually fill it out and turn it in. So the group is just meant as like a group study session. Get together and kind of get through this together, but not everybody in the group has to make one document and turn it in. So everybody's going to basically get scores on their own effort. If you find someone is coming to the group every week saying, please do all my work for me, that's not at all what we want to have happen. And so we'll need to get involved there and kind of remediate that situation. So that's your assignments for the week. Read the devotion, look at the introductory post, read the lecture, track your expenses, do the case study. But here's the biggie. Where are you going to get the information from? From the book. Chapters 1, 2, and 5 are what you need to be reading, and your assignments and things about week 1 will come from those chapters. So what I want to do now is take us to the textbook, and give me a second because I think it's probably not showing up on your screen. So let me see if I can get this to show up on your screen. Yeah, hopefully that's showing up on your screen and you're able to see the textbook. I've turned to chapter 1. This should be the opening page of chapter 1. And chapter 1 talks about financial planning, how it's difficult, lists 10 important principles of financial planning. This chapter is not a difficult chapter to read. It does a nice overview of what we're going to study, but it's not the math-oriented chapters that freak everybody out. So I'm going to kind of skip over talking about it. I do want you to read it because it is really important, but in the scope of where do you need the teacher, that's not a chapter I think you need the teacher to kind of explain and lecture on and teach you a little bit more. Chapter 2 gets into some of the nitty-gritty. So it begins with talking about the steps that you need to do. Step 1 is you need to figure out where you're at. How am I doing right now financially? Step 2, I need to make some goals. Step 3, I got to figure out how I'm going to get to my goals. Step 4 is start doing it. And then 5 is this continuous loop thing that says, okay, now that you've got your goals and you know what you're supposed to be doing, start doing it. And then every once in a while, stop and say, is my plan still working? Is it right from where I'm at in life right now? And then if you need to, take another snapshot of where you're at now, make some different goals or adjust your goals and so on. And it just becomes a loop. Okay, sorry, this is not the easiest to navigate all the electronic books I've seen. We talked about implementing the plan, establishing your goals. Sorry, I'm so much better with a physical textbook. Let's see if we can get this through. Page 7 of the book. Page 8 of the book. Here we go. You have a worksheet, and this is going to remind you what the worksheet is called. Remember that whole file of worksheets I told you are there if you need them, use them if you want, like the rent versus buy? They're numbered. This is referring to worksheet 1, and it looks just like this. So if you are given a problem, either about yourself or about that family that you're giving advice to, helping them make goals. It's a worksheet that organizes all the information about goals, and you can put them down on paper. The next part talks about where you are in your life. Goals are different depending on who you are. If you're over 65 years old, you're not necessarily saving for retirement anymore. You're probably in retirement. 55 to 64, you're really starting to approach retirement, so your goals are a whole lot about retirement. And the earlier years, which like earlier years up to age 54, you have different goals. Setting a family, buying a house, starting to pay off the house, establishing more savings, paying the kids college, all those kinds of things are in those years. So it'll walk you through different typical goals for times. Table 1-1, the cost of raising a child. This always confuses people. I don't know where they get the numbers. You'll probably laugh with me, but I'll tell you what they're trying to do with them. One, how much you spend on the kid or kids that you have will depend on the household income. So if the household income is less than $60,000, the amount you spend on housing, food, transportation, clothing, healthcare, childcare, etc., is probably different than somebody making over $105,000. They say that the total expenses for the whole first 18 years is about $173,000 for one child, almost $400,000 for one child if they're a high-income family. Then they break it down by category. But they do put this little thing up here that always tends to cause problems in the homework problems. 0.77. It says 77%. So if this family had 3 kids, you take this number, let's say they have an income around $60,000, this would be the price or the cost of raising one kid. If they're raising 3 kids, times it by 3, and times it by 77%. While it sounds like annoying math, if we stop and just kind of get away from the math and go, this is kind of logical. I know in my family it is. The first kid is expensive. That's the kid you buy the crib, the stroller. There's so much stuff you buy for that first kid. But second kid, third kid, they use the crib. There wasn't another crib purchased. Sometimes the clothing is passed down. There's a lot of additional costs that are smaller for the second kid. So instead of having a different one, like a number that says first kid costs this much, second kid costs this much, third kid, they just say take this, multiply by how many kids, and then multiply by 77%. And that will shrink it down and say once you get more than one child, the cost changes a little bit. Sorry, this is the second kid, I think, the cost of. First kid's even more expensive than this, and second, third, or third, fourth, fifth, and so on are smaller. If you have problems computing it, let me know. I honestly, when I check your homework, I tell you how you should have gone about it and what the right answer is, but I don't knock points for it. So if this chart is just, and you're sure you're doing it wrong, contact me, we can correct it, but don't freak out, don't worry, I'm not going to slap your patties for having a wrong number there. I just want you to kind of see it's expensive to raise a kid. Now, when I told you they'd laugh at it, I'm sorry, but these numbers are not what I spent per child by any means. Even if I were to really sit down and think about how much I spent on each of these areas, I think they're way out of whack. I can't imagine spending some of these numbers per child. But I've got 5 kids, so I guess I just had to shrink a lot of these things down. But different parts of the country, they're going to be different too. So I've got to say that this is probably done by averaging the whole country, or maybe weighting it towards some of the more expensive areas of the country. What was I doing? We were going to go on to choosing a career. Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Most of your questions are not going to be on things like that. 10 principles. I must be back in chapter 1. Yeah, that's where I confused myself. I thought I stayed in chapter 2 when I somehow got myself to chapter 1. Chapter 2 talks about a balance sheet, and most of the time I spend time teaching accounting, so this is right up my alley. A balance sheet talks about these 3 things. Your assets, which boil down to what you own. Your liabilities are what you owe. And your net worth is what's left when you take all those assets, pay off all those bills, would you have anything left over? Then they're going to take some time talking about your assets and showing you a worksheet, which they're going to call worksheet 4. And this is worksheet 4. But when you open it, it's going to look very much like this picture in the book. And you're going to fill in these different blanks. How many monetary assets do you have? Monetary meaning money, and it will help you through exactly what goes in each one of these lines. But you'll total up all your assets, you total up your bills, and you'll find out if you have anything left over. And you'll probably be doing it for a few homework problems where you make the same document for that couple you're giving advice to. As you can see, they're going to walk you through several of the assets and what they are and what goes in those categories. Same thing with liabilities and your net worth. And if you're as old as I am, you know where he stole this couple's name from. Bewitched was a TV show that started in the 1960s, stretched into the 70s, and this was a couple that was on the show. And he uses them as an example to show you how to make out a balance sheet. And then he continues on, after showing you the balance sheet for Larry and Louise, he takes you to an income statement, which is worksheet 5. And that is looking at the money coming in and the money going out. And hopefully the money coming in is bigger than the money going out. This is what I'm hoping you are getting everything around to take care of so that you can fill this out for you. But you also will be filling it out in those story problems in your book for other people. And they'll tell you what income is, what expenditures are. Expenditures, think spending money. And the sample one for Larry and Louise is right here. Then, after you prepare the income statement, they're going to have you look at a few things. Remember the group project? You had to compute the current ratio for the couple in the textbook, the Dumonts, I think their name was. You had to make the current ratio. Well, the current ratio is this formula right here. I know it probably just made it hard to see. Monetary assets divided by how many current liabilities you have. And they do it for Larry and Louise Tate. So they show you they took their monetary assets divided by the current liabilities. And they get $2.39 or 2.39 times. That means for every dollar in current bills that are due right now or in the next short period of time, you have this much in money. So I have $2.39 for every dollar of bills that I have. And most financial advisors look for a current ratio of 2.0 or above. So Larry and Louise are doing pretty good. And there's another ratio to do. And another thing to look at, an emergency fund. Have enough to cover 3 to 6 months of expenditures. Well, if you don't know how much you're spending each month, it's pretty hard to figure out what 3 of those months would be like, or 6 months. So again, we're back to tracking our expenses so that we can start deciding, oh, how big an emergency fund should I be coming up with? And some more questions or more ratios to figure out, all in these pink boxes. Savings ratio, all those will help you decide how somebody's doing. There's a ratio and there's generally a rule of thumb, they call it. Like, financial advisors like to see at least this. That will help you analyze, because you just do the formula and get a number and you're like, oh, okay, there's the number, but I don't know what it means. Each one of these should have a here's what it means to go with it. So chapter 2 is all about making the balance sheet, income statement, and computing these different ratios. Chapter 5, because we are doing these chapters out of order, we're doing 1, 2, and 5 this week. And let's see, chapter 5, sits in part 2 of the textbook. This is a chapter I think that will make a lot of sense. It's talking about how to manage liquid money. Where do you do bank? How do you keep track of it? Liquid assets means money you can get your money out of fast. Pay yourself first. Financial institutions, should I choose a bank or a credit union? What should I look for in a bank? What should I look for in a credit union? Again, this is like chapter 1. A lot of good information in here. But usually something that you can read and go, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Students typically don't have a lot of questions in chapters 1 and 5. 2, because it's all the numbers, it's a little more confusing. So I'm going to end here, and hopefully you're going to contact me and tell me how you're doing, and if you have any questions, and please let me know about those groups. Like I said, if I don't hear from you, I'm just going to go ahead and set the groups up with the names in the roster. You know, pick the top 4 names and put them in a group, that kind of thing. So 24 hours till late tomorrow night, groups will be posted based on what I hear from all of you.